Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
Good morning and welcome to all of you from all across the internet who are joining us right now. We are broadcasting live on 12 different platforms across the internet: Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, and on our own page, politicaltradesecrets.com. And thank you for joining us today, because we're going to be having a really, I think, an important dialogue, an important structured dialogue that hopefully will leave you with a little bit more power and also a little less upset at the end of the conversation. We know that people are dealing with a lot that they're watching in politics right now. And having been in politics for 20 years, we have been able to figure out how to handle that. But before we go into all that, I'd like to introduce my co-host and friend, Sean Bartley. Sean, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Good morning.
Well, thank you for being here, and I know that everybody's going to be interested to see what you have to say today and what we have to share with folks. And thank you for making it happen this morning. And I'm excited about this. We're a little bit late. We've had a few technical difficulties, and there could be lots of opportunities to be upset. And so we get that. And this is something that we're going to be actually looking at. This could be anything in your life, but we see in politics in particular right now that people have the opportunity to have lots of upset in their life. So we'll have that conversation.
Apparently Big Tech knew that we wanted to be talking about this today, so they said, let us help, which was very nice of them. So but first, I want to let folks know how this show is possible, and it's thanks to our great sponsors. And first, look, what we're talking about today is how to be in the arena without being upset, or when you get upset, how to handle that powerfully and quickly. And look, you're looking around, you're probably saying, someone needs to step up and run for office or make the difference in the community with an organization or whatnot. Guess what? Someone's you. So reach out to us. And how do you do that? You reach out to us at olsonstrategies.com. That's OLSON strategies.com. We can have a conversation with you about how best to get into the arena and make the difference that you want to make for your community, your state, the country, and even the world. So you can email me at Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. And we'd love to have that conversation with you. So get on the calendar today. We're also proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What do? It's all of the one-on-one, person-to-person, grassroots campaigning that goes on. Where does it happen? It's in front of the doorstep, on the doorstep, in front of the grocery store, or over the phone with canvassing, petitioning, paid live calling. Look, you got one shot at making a great first impression. So why not leave it to the professionals who do this all over the country, all over the world? And that is Grassfire, and you can reach them www.grassfire.us. They also fuel 10centtexting.com. It's as easy as it sounds, folks. Send your text with an image, GIF, or short video at 10 cents a piece to the voters who need to hear from you most. Look, right now, we know that Congress and state legislatures all over the country are in session, kicking off the legislative session. And if you're a legislator or you work for a legislator and you're saying, how do we communicate what's going on with the people back in the district? Well, 10 cent texting is one of the easiest ways to do that.
I think it's going to be that this is for conservatives and Republicans out there. This might be one of the the only ways you can get your message to people at this time. So this is a way to get beyond a lot of the big tech suppression that's happening out there. And this is the way that people can actually get their message. You can let people know about a town hall that you might be having or anything. Like, this is the way to actually get in front of people.
Absolutely. And it is such a key point. Look, people open their text and then work with the folks at 10 Cent Texting to actually make it compelling and something that they'll act on. So visit 10 Cent Texting today.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Dustin.
Well, thank you for sharing all that, and we really do hope that people use those services so that they can actually make a difference and really have a guide to help them through the process of making a difference. So one of the other ways that you can be a part of this conversation, we talked about yesterday how if you're concerned about all this social media shut down, all these things are happening around the First Amendment and free speech, ways that you can do that. And one of the ways to ensure that we can still have a conversation here is to go to politicaltradesecrets.com, and you can watch the program there. We stream it live all the time, and you can go ahead and you can sign up to be part of our Political Trade Secrets Insiders, and that way we have a way to communicate with you. We can set up live streams exclusively through our email and everything else. So it's really important that we as conservatives and Republicans figure out ways that we can have more opportunities to be able to meet and to exercise that First Amendment right. So if you go to politicaltradesecrets.com and sign up, we'll also send you a gift, a book from our library, and we really do appreciate that you join us there. And one of the things, so right now as I said earlier, we're live streaming across the internet. You can post your questions and comments as we go through this conversation. And actually, really do want to have your thoughts today as we go through, because it's going to be very important for you to be a part of this conversation. So we're going to be asking some questions, and we're going to encourage you to walk through this dialogue with us, because that's how I think it's going to have the biggest impact. If you have pen and paper, I recommend you have that for yourself as we go through this conversation today as well. So Women Reigniting Patriotism already posted a comment. Sign up so you can't be shut out. I appreciate it. That's wonderful. And good morning to you as well. And Janine says hi, or Jeannie says hi, Sean. And that's so
Hey,
he says hi back.
Glad to have you all joining us today. It really is. This really is a great episode to be with. I think, as we said in the description, if you're having trouble even watching the news, which we totally get, I at least am there. I had to take the weekend off from watching any of it. I know I tried to we read a few stories that we could talk about for Monday, but I was like, I couldn't. I wasn't going to be with it this weekend.
Well, it's just part of the thing. Like you can just go through all the news stories that are happening right now. I'm just going to pull it up. So here's the thing. I'm gonna mention a few things. Some of them probably will be upsetting, and that's perfectly fine. If you're upset in this moment, that's fine. So, House to vote on resolution calling for the use of the 25th Amendment. I mean, that's anybody here, I think, thinks that that's crazy. So Rumble, which is a competitor to Google, is suing YouTube for allegedly unfair rigging of search algorithms against them. And that's one of our other options. Parler registers domain with right-leaning web hosting companies. So that's good to know that they're having to, I understand that they've gone through multiple server companies. They start the process of having a conversation with them. They're going to use them, and then they come back and say, we can't do it. And that's happened multiple times since Amazon shut them down. Joe Manchin, okay, well, that's good. He says the Senate doesn't have the votes to convict Trump if impeached. Well, that's obvious. But the question is he going to vote to get rid of the filibuster? There's a headline, The Great Deplatforming. banks begin severing business ties with President Trump. This is one of the big dangers that's out there, is the possibility of banking being the next place that people can put a little bit of pressure on folks. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff that's happening. Most of those things can be very upsetting as you go through those news stories.
And so I actually was talking to a few chiefs of staffs yesterday
Mhm.
on the Hill, and they were telling me about how the corporations are saying that they're putting a freeze on their donations to them for questioning the votes in numerous states, um, and it was just a really interesting conversation around that. Um, in particular, that there is an opportunity in these corporations deciding they're not going to basically support Republicans
Mhm.
anymore. That the Republican Party, through no fault of its own, can become the working class party in America.
Mhm.
So it's really interesting what we're seeing going on in politics right now, and there are opportunities. So that's we'll get into it here in a few minutes, but it's one of the ways to keep from getting upset too. So
Yeah. And one of the things when so all this stuff's happening, I want to one thing that's in the headlines I want to just mention that people, if they're not aware of, is Sheldon Adelson has passed away, and
oh,
um, a lot of people had turned him into a boogeyman like they do any Republican donor. But this is somebody who put his money where his mouth is, and he's funded a lot of efforts that have made a difference for all of us over the last over however many decades, particularly the last decade. So we want to remember him and remember the contribution that he's made for our country. The last 4 years really probably wouldn't have been possible without his support of conservative efforts and the work that he's done for American and Israeli um, relations is also pretty important. So we'll get into this conversation then. So I just wanted to point just take a moment to recognize
yeah,
that. So as we go through this conversation, feel free to um, post any questions and comments. If something doesn't make sense, make a point to post a comment. And then also, if you have a pen and paper, I recommend you walk through this process for yourself. I think it'll be very helpful. So we have a couple of comments. Total digital coup d'etat and technocracy from Calandra, and then um, how do you keep from getting discouraged as you are beginning your career in politics? Sometimes I really feel like just giving up. Well, thank you for posting that comment. I think today's conversation is going to be really important.
yep,
Um, and this is going to be a little bit different than the type of conversations most people are going to be having in politics. This is not what you're going to find on talk radio. This is going to be a little bit different. This is all based in ontology and phenomenology, which are big words that don't really matter that much, but it's all about who you're being and your experience of the world. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing is, it seems really simple, but what you have to get is like when you're actually upset. That's the first thing, is to get that there's something happening and that you're actually upset, you're angry, you're having these emotions, these things are somewhat overcoming you. Is the first thing is just to acknowledge that it's happened.
yeah,
Watching the news and all of a sudden, like you're like reacting to it, and we talked about yesterday that the story of Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps and how he realized that nobody could ever take his freedom away because he always had that moment between stimulus and response. He always could choose what his reaction is. So the first thing is to get that you're in that moment where you get to actually choose that. And so, Sean, if you want to
yeah.
add.
Well, I wanted to. This is a great primer to what Alexandria had in her comment, which is, look, first, just getting that you're discouraged,
Yeah,
and say, I'm discouraged. This is where I'm at right now.
yeah.
And whatever else is coming along with it. So you mentioned feeling like giving up. Whatever else is there, you just want to get it out.
Yeah,
Because
because it'd be inauthentic to pretend like you're not. to pretend like it's not there. First thing is just to recognize that that's something that's there for you.
And normally, what we do is we're discouraged or upset or whatever we are, and then we pretend that we're not, and we say we're something else altogether.
Hmm.
And while basically they're still running everything underneath, but we've put some veneer over it. And so, and by the way, you see this plenty, right? Maybe back when people used to go out to eat, um, maybe your server was having a bad day, and they would smile, but underneath it was they were they were ready to be triggered at just about anything, right? So you've had those experiences before.
You've been that person.
Yes, yes, and for people who know, in high school and college, I used to wait tables, and I used to be someone who would feel that way from time to time. And looking back, I wish I would have just went out the back door and screamed for a minute and came back and did the job. Probably would have been better for everyone involved. But that's something that's available here. So really, just getting that first is the
Yes,
thing.
I just make a note to recognize when you're upset and just to acknowledge it. And that's the first thing to do, is just acknowledge it. The next thing is so you're sitting there at your home, you're sitting there at your office, you're sitting wherever you're at, or you're talking to somebody. And we have this idea that something's happening to us. This is one of the reasons why we created when we had the conversation on Friday, we talked about who we are being in this moment. And we talked about, for ourselves, what we had decided is that we would be empowered, be fearless, and be Americans, and have that be where we stand as political leaders, as being empowered, being fearless, and being American. And for the being empowered, one of the things that could be very easy for people is to fall into a victimhood, or and not even be authentic or real with yourself, that you're actually being a victim about this, that somehow the world is happening to us, and that we're at the effect of all these circumstances and all of these situations. And when you're at the effect of things, and you are acting like you have no power in that moment, then you are a victim. That's really what that is. And thank you for sharing. And that's, by the way, an action you can take today to do something positive, is sharing this this episode and sharing the website as well. So thank you for doing that. And so as you're in this moment and you're watching the news, you're reading you read a headline, and it has this effect that you are, in that moment, you are upset, you're angry, you're annoyed, you're perturbed, whatever it is. It's all some form of being upset. The first thing to do after you've acknowledged that, one, I'm upset, is then to get that you're maybe in a conversation with somebody, you're reading an article, you're watching TV. The upset isn't out there. The thing that's happening is actually over here with you. So the first thing is to it's between your ears, in the emotions you have and the bodily sensations that you're having. That's where the actual reaction is happening. So if you couldn't see and you couldn't hear, you would not be having this reaction at all. So the first thing to do is to not have it be something that's happening out there, but to get that the actual being upset about it is happening over here with you. And that's the first thing, because that starts to give you a little bit of power over the situation. You're the one having the reaction. You're the one having the emotion. You're the one who's in the middle of that situation. It's not the external things to you.
Yeah, and so the things to notice in this are, blank is making me angry, or blank makes me, well, whatever. It's, no, it's really whatever that you've created that means, or whatever else is going on. And it's perfectly normal to have it feel and occur that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just think about how we talk. I mean,
Yeah,
that
makes me so upset.
Yeah,
But no, you're the one who's upset.
Mhm.
This thing is just it. It's the idea of like you walk outside and you don't have an umbrella and you're too far from the house and it starts raining and it rains on you and that rain is just making you so upset. Well, the truth is the rain doesn't give two you know what's about it. The rain doesn't have any thoughts about this or any feelings about it. You're the one who's having a reaction. It's all over there with you,
Yeah.
the reaction to the rain.
And the truth is, you're just upset that you didn't grab an umbrella.
Mhm.
That's you know, if you had an umbrella, would you be upset? Probably not.
Yeah.
Uh,
So no matter what being upset, the being angry, the being frustrated, the being whatever, that's all happening. If you have this, it's all happening right now, in the moment, in the present. Oftentimes, what you're reacting to is your memories of something that's happened in the past, and you're relating to that, like it's reminding you of something like that happened in the past, or you're relating it to something you think might happen, some perceived threat in the future that you think is going to happen. So the first thing to do is just get like, okay, I'm upset. Second thing is to get, I'm the one, it's happening over here with me. It's not the external circumstances where it's happening. It's actually happening here with me. And then the next thing is to get is the I would ask three questions. These are not originally my questions, but these are three questions that I recommend that people ask themselves at this moment because it really helps you actually get what's going on in the moment. And that is, you know, what's being stopped? Like, what's your intention that's being stopped in this moment? Like, or at least you perceive it that way. What is it that you think should happen or what you have an expectation of? And then what is it that you are being bottled up and are not communicating or wish you could communicate to somebody? So the first one is what's the intention that's being stopped? Next thing is what's an expectation that's not being fulfilled? And then the third is what's a communication that you wish you could deliver and haven't. So those are the three things. And the thing is like, so Sean, what's something that's really been upsetting for you in all of this?
um, what's been upsetting for me is uh, is what I take as the overreaction um, from everyone. First, the building up of the whole situation, and now I have it that it's being used as an excuse to try to get rid of the president. Not just um, and I just have it that winning or losing an election was never going to be enough for these folks.
Yeah.
That they're out for all destruction, and so I get that I've really created quite the story around what's going on the other end, and I've definitely been given what I think is plenty of evidence to back it up.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Calandra said total digital coup d'etat and technocracy. And, um, I imagine with Alexandria, the idea that starting your career in politics and being discouraged. And it's so the intention there. So thinking about all these things is that we have an intention for the best to happen for our country. And I think what we're dealing with, um, and we have a comment here. It does seem like overkill to try and impeach the president, and not just that, but to completely take away his voice and to financially hurt him. That's happening right now. They've given a lot for the country. My mom made the comment of he's going to lose. It seems like he's going to lose everything for a job he didn't even get paid for because he gave up his paycheck.
yeah,
And and I think what people are getting is the unfairness of it. So there's an intention here that we all have an intention for the best to happen for the country. We also have an intention for for Alexandria to have to make a difference. You want to make a difference in politics, and it feels like there's barriers to that. Um, there's an expectation of fairness. Now, I will tell you that fairness doesn't actually exist. It's not an actual thing. You can't point it out and figure out what it is. It's all based on people's perceptions. But still, we have this expectation that things be fair, and it really does not seem like things are fair. We also have an expectation of a First Amendment, and it feels like it's not, that expectation is not being met at this moment. So that's all there. And then and finally, you just want to like scream from the mountaintop about it, I'm guessing, and just like tell people. And it feels like that's being thwarted as well, the ability to actually deliver that communication to the people who it would matter. So when you look through this, there's going to be one of these that's probably the biggest thing that's happening, some intention that's being stopped, some expectation that's not being fulfilled, and some communication that you haven't delivered or can't deliver. Mostly it's just you haven't delivered it. And it also doesn't mean you need to deliver it. It's just you feel like you should deliver it, and and it hasn't been delivered. So you have something to get off your chest.
I would
So
say for me, it's the intention. The because my intention is that we really be able to have a robust political system where voices are heard and people's votes count, and we really and there's a real give and take, and so and it just occurs to me that that's not what we have at the moment. So
yeah, that's definitely the case. And what do you think is an expectation that you have that's not being fulfilled?
yeah, well, I'd say if an expectation is that there be at least some um, uh, something that's at least somewhat fair. No, I mean that the expectation is like um, the yeah, I guess I have it like the shutting down of the president being able to communicate, um, and the shutting down of Parlor. I guess I think the expectation is that people can at least do their basic communicating on what has become the public square.
Yeah.
Um, and I, because I really thought, hey, it's the right of the media just not to report on what the president is tweeting or saying.
Mhm.
But I also have it. They can't help themselves. So
Yeah.
this was to protect the media from themselves, perhaps. But um,
Perhaps. And what we're getting to in all of this is that this isn't necessarily what's actually real. It's just what's real for you and your reaction to it. So, by the way, we did an episode about a month ago, a little bit over a month ago, where we shared our context creation process that we use for communications before, like an interview or what have you. It's a really quick process, and uh, and we're basically going through the backwards. We're going through it from the back end now, because ultimately what we do when we do communications, we create an intention, we create an experience that you want to leave someone, and then from there you'll come up with the communication that you'll have from this. So what we're getting is that any time that you're upset or you're angry or whatever, there is some kind of intention that's not happening. It's being stopped. There's some kind of expectation that's not being fulfilled or is um, non-existent, or it's there but it's not happening. And then some communication that you either feel like you can't say, or you haven't been able to say. So there's those are always present whenever you're angry, you're upset, uh, you're perturbed, you're frustrated, whatever it is. Those are all going to be part of that equation. So it's pretty simple. Once you start getting that, you realize, and these are all things that they probably remind you of something from your past, or there's something that's a made up possible future in your mind, like this is where it's going to all end. Like, oh, I just know this is going to be something that prevents um, prevents me from doing X. For instance, what Alexandria mentioned, all of this is going to prevent me from having the career I want to have in politics, perhaps. We don't know that. It might be that you were put on this earth at this moment to be able to provide leadership at the time that we need it. It could be that that's, yeah, we don't know exactly, but that's another way to look at it. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday that the idea that we're going into this basically Democrat controlled kind of almost lockdown of our lives with Biden, and at a time that this person was looking to retire, and that's a possible future that is frightening, and what that's being, the interpretation that someone's having of that. And so that's actually what you're dealing with, not with what's actually happening right now. It's the possible future. So the next thing is to get, so after you've actually like looked at it for yourself, what is it, what's the intention that is being stopped here? What's this intention that's being thwarted? What's this expectation that I have that's not being fulfilled? And what's communication that I want to deliver, wish I could deliver, haven't delivered? Um, write those out for yourself, and get a sense for what actually is going on with all of it. And then, get a sense for what this reminds you of in the past. For myself, I really get, so when I was in high school and probably grade school in particular, my mom was really great about making sure that we were friends with everybody, trying to be friends with everybody. Of course, there's cliques wherever you're at, and there'd be people who would be, I don't know if I'd say ostracized, but they weren't treated as being as cool or whatever else as the rest of the group, and they were treated as outsiders, and that just incensed me when I would see that. And I asked my parents about this last night, if there's a something that this reminds them of when they see the unjust nature of how President Trump's being treated and how half of the country is being treated. And for them, it reminded them of when they were in middle school, and at that time was the first time that they'd had the mentally handicapped children placed into the same middle school, and how just mercilessly those children were treated by the other children, and how it just incensed them in that moment. And really, the way they're reacting to right now is basically how they reacted to that in middle school. So there's something that this reminds you of. It's not a new conversation that you're having. It's not some new experience that you're having. It reminds you of something from your past. And for everybody who's on this side of the country, um, in this mental way, like in this half of the country,
Mhm.
there's something that this reminds you of. There's a reason why you have the beliefs you have and everything else. There's some experience you've had in your past that, and this now is just fulfilling more of what you expect to see. Sean, does that make you think of anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you know, well, I talked about the what's being stopped or thwarted or whatever you want to call it, is this idea of being able to make a difference and whatnot. And I think just to just other times when especially I think in school when it's like, okay, that's not the time and the place for this, or when you wanted to stand up to something, where remember in college it was the first class that was mandated to buy a certain computer.
Mhm.
We had to buy a computer, and I'm like, this is outrageous. Why can't I just go buy a Dell for 300 or 400 bucks? I have to spend all this money instead. Um, and they said, well, that's nice you feel that way, and buy the computer. So
Well, it reminds you of those times when you're, frankly, a kid, even in
yeah,
college, you're still a kid,
yeah,
and you were told you have to do something, and there's no reason given. It's just this is how it is,
yep,
and you have to do it, and it didn't make sense to you, and it took your freedom to choose what you wanted at that moment. And I'm
yeah,
guessing if you go further back, there's some
oh
point,
yeah,
like even if you're like when you're in elementary school, where you're being told something that you're a pretty logical person, and you're a pretty smart person. So you probably saw the fallacy of whatever it is. I've seen this before where you just like, this is stupid. You don't say those words. You just like, it's obvious to you, like, this is not commonsensical. And you do like to like, just make sure, like, you do realize, and you like to tell the person, like, you do realize this completely is nonsensical. I don't know if you use those words exactly, but you want to make sure they realize that, okay, I'm going to go along with this, but you do get that this is stupid. Yes, I think that's a common thing, and that's perfectly fine. It's just it is a because it's like, why are we doing this stupid thing? Why are we going down this nonsensical road when it's obvious to anybody with some common sense that we shouldn't be going down? I totally get that. We have a comment here. I think there's an opening for conservative Republicans to run for office, and I think there will be a ring shed in the GOP. I find comfort in knowing the laws of homeostasis can't be denied. Well, thank you for posting the comment. And I'm not sure if I completely get what a ring shed is for in the GOP, but I get the sense that there's really, we're starting to get a sense for who just wants to go along to get along, and then who are the people who actually want to stand. And we're getting a better sense of, I guess, really who we are as a country. So I would ask that question, like, what does this remind you of something in your past? Because the truth, rhino. Yeah, there we go. There'll be rhino shed in the GOP. I got it. Okay, that makes plenty of sense. So the next thing to find out, so you get a sense for, you're probably actually reacting to something that happened a long time ago, and it's something where you didn't have power in the situation ultimately. That's what we're reacting to in all of this, is a sense that we don't have power in the moment. We always have power in our reaction. So the next thing is asking yourself, what's actually fact about this situation? What is it actually that's knowable fact, that is what is so, is how we talk about it. Like, what is actually so about it? The who, what, when, where of the situation, like the bare minimum facts that you can actually know in the situation, and distinguish that from, we've talked about, we showed the diagram last week, distinguish that from what your interpretation is of it, what your filter on it is, what your lens, your point of view, what the media's point of view is, their opinion, all the different opinions. Like, separate the what is actually so about it from the what is being made up about it and what's being interpreted and all that stuff. Because the truth is, we're actually mostly reacting to the what we've made up about it. All this, the questions about the intentions, expectations, and the communication, that's all stuff that's really been made up. So on the stuff of the past week, so a lot of people are upset about what happened last Wednesday. Well, at this point, I would suggest that most of us don't really know much about what is actually so about it. We know that we don't know the exact number, somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million people outside of the Capitol. We know that the president gave a speech earlier that he said the things that he said, which were, simply, we're going to take a walk. And, if you can go back to the transcript, my interpretation of it was that it was all pretty benign. I was actually there listening to it, and I've watched it since, and it's all pretty benign. But that's the interpretation of it. It's we're going to take a walk, and then people walk to the Capitol at some point, and it's not even clear as to when the stuff happened. If it happened before the people who were at the speech showed up, or if it happened, it's not even known exactly when. At some point, there was some number of people who got into the Capitol, and some people did so with destruction, and some people did so by just walking in. And we know that there was at least one person who was attacked and died, and another person who was shot and died. And then there's other things that happened with other people. There's things that we know, but we don't know too much more beyond that as to the rest of it. I mean, there's really, That's the basic stuff. Now, what then then the rest of the country makes it mean, some people called it insurrection. Some people said there's sedition. Some people started talking about, we've lost the moral high ground, all this other stuff that people have interpreted things as. And they made it into they're all Republicans, or they're all Antifa, they're all these things. We all had our interpretations all at the moment. And the truth is, we don't know exactly what happened. So, so separating that, the what is actually so from all the other stuff, the actual facts from all the other stuff, it doesn't mean that those interpretations and those filters or any of them are invalid necessarily in what you think it means for the country. It doesn't mean it's invalid, but just being clear between the two. This is by far the most important thing you can do to not be angry and upset about politics, is to be able to distinguish. And you're watching a news report that there's very little fact that you're being given.
Yeah.
And some stuff that feels like it's fact isn't fact. Like you see a video of something, you're not being presented a fact. You're being presented a point of view of a situation, because a camera can only give you one point of view from one angle at a time as to what's happening. And we all saw it with the Covington kids situation. You do an edit before and after, you lose the context, and all of a sudden you have a very different experience. You do a jump cut edit in a video. I've seen a couple of videos in the last week where there's edits in them, and the edits definitely have an impact on your understanding of what's going on. Or there's a video that's from a long time ago, and then it's being presented this week, and you think that it's about the same thing. There's a perfect example of a news story that was lacking any context, and that's the Chad Wolf resignation yesterday. And NBC in particular had a very misleading article about it. They say that Chad Wolf resigns after the events of last week. Well, that's true. He resigned yesterday, and the events of last week happened last week. Obvious. But there's nothing, and he actually gives more of the reason in his letter that because he's acting secretary and all the Democrats have thwarted his actual appointment. So it got to the point where he just couldn't do his job, and so he resigned. Now, there's other things he said in the last week, and there might be, people were upset about other things, but that's not the same thing as he did it because of things that happened specifically on Wednesdays, what they're trying to indicate. So that's not actually in evidence. It's not actually what was presented. And yet they, just by saying this happened after this happened, they want you to make the connection. It's really remarkable. So that's the big thing, is to just be able to separate the actual what you know and get what you're making it mean, the interpretations you have, and all of that. Sean, anything you want to add, or thoughts you want to add as we talk about that?
Well, I think that's really a great great way to look at this. I think and you saw it, like more broadly, we were told slew of resignations after this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
After something else after the vote is that that is when Biden became president-elect. So you had 2 weeks to either stick around or find new employment. So that's how it
works. By the way, this is part of I guess being somebody who has we talk about the Gell-Mann amnesia effect quite a bit, because it's a really important psychological distinction. And just as a refresher, Gell-Mann is he was a physicist, and whenever he read a story about physics, he found it to be utterly nonsense, any news story. And then when he read something about the Middle East, he'd be like, "Oh, okay, that sounds right." And then eventually he realizes, well, that doesn't make sense. Why is it that the one thing I know about is the thing that always has news stories that are absurd, and the things that I don't know about, I just take as face value. So one thing that people don't realize is once it was clear that the vote was happening, the HR function of the the administration on Wednesday before anything happened. An email was sent out to all appointees of the president, all the presidential appointees, telling them how they go about putting in their letter of resignation correctly so that they, can get unemployment or they can do whatever. But there's certain ways you have to legally word your letter of resignation in order to have the force of law or whatever it is. There's like a specific way it has to be worded so that you do it correctly. And everybody has to present a letter of resignation. That's just required. So you have to submit your letter of resignation in the current situation between last Wednesday and a week from tomorrow. That's what you needed to do. So it's like every single political appointee, every presidential appointee will have to resign now. And that had to start. The letter, the instruction was sent out last Wednesday. So all the slew of resignations, there might be some people who use it as an opportunity to like try to separate themselves, and they were worried about being able to get employment. But that's like one or two people, and then the rest of them, they're like, oh, and this person did, and this person did, and this person did. Well, that's because they got an email from the HR folks telling them how to do it, and that they needed to start submitting their letters so that it could actually officially transition out of their job. That's what happened. And you get this whole news story that's even still happening. So that's the perfect example of the Gelman amnesia effect, is that for most people, they would have no access to that bit of information I just said. They would have no idea that that's a thing. And who knows how much of an impact that has on all of it, but it's definitely a thing. So we have a couple of things. I have a couple of questions, and we'll go to those in just a second. But the next thing is, as you've distinguished from what is actually so versus what you've interpreted as, or other people have interpreted as, other people's opinions, their point of views, and all that, once you get clarity as to what is knowable, and what is so, and the interpretation, you start to have a little bit of peace and a little bit of separation from all of this. You get most of it's going on between your ears, and you have a chance to either stay upset. You can make a choice as to whether you want to stay upset, or if you want to invent a new way of viewing all of this, or if you want to create a new way of being about it. So for instance, this is what we actually did on Friday when we had the show about 3 ways to deal with all this powerfully. And we created being, when I say created, it's an actual conversation. We said this is who we're gonna be in the moment, which is being empowered, being fearless, and being American. We said that that's who we're gonna be. It wasn't naturally where we were. We were upset like everybody else. So we chose and decided that we were gonna be empowered, fearless, and American in the moment, despite all the thoughts and feelings and ideas and all the things that are going on in our heads. We chose to be that way about it. And then that gives you new options of actions to take and things to communicate and things like that. So you can either stay upset, and that's perfectly fine if that's where you want to be, and you might not be ready to move to holding it a new way. So for Alexandria, another way you could hold all this is what we suggested earlier, that it's possible that this is, you were born for this. I mean, this is just another way to look at it. You're born for this, and we need people like you now. That's actually why we started Political Trade Secrets, is so that we can empower the next generation of political leaders who are the ones who are going to reignite American patriotism. Because having that commonality between all of us as Americans is what's needed in this moment. And not to get caught up in all these petty differences, not to end up being, our identities that separate us, but to actually stand together as Americans, regardless of whatever else might be different about us. So you were born for this moment, and it's actually an opportunity that in the moment when most people would call this a moment of crisis, that's when leaders are made. And you think back to World War II and that time period, we call them the greatest generation. And they're the people who came up as young people, as leaders in that moment. And that is that is your opportunity as well. So that could be whole nother way to hold that, and you get a chance to invent that, to create that for yourself, how you're going to relate to all of this.
Yeah, I think that's great. And one thing you said in there was, you can choose to stay upset. Now, I would encourage you, like, if you say I'm upset and I'm determined to be upset, well then say I'm going to be upset. And
Yeah.
even just saying that kind of makes you chuckle a little bit about it, to be perfectly
Yeah,
honest.
I'm just gonna have my hair on fire and scream at the air.
Yeah.
And
And if you choose to do that, I just encourage you to say, okay, I'm going to be upset for the next 30 minutes or 90 minutes or day or whatever it is,
Mhm.
But really take it on like you're choosing it. And it's not like I'm going to let the news media keep me upset forever.
Yeah.
Um,
So you might ask, like, why does this have to do with politics and campaigns? Well, it's obvious what it has to do with politics. You're going to get upset a lot in politics. It's just going to happen. And we use this all the time as a way to help our candidates, because when you're running for office, it's such a personal experience for people when you put your name on the ballot, because people are going to be saying yay or nay is how it feels for you. So everything feels very personal, and being able to give yourself a little bit of space here and be able to handle this, being upset, being angry, being frustrated, being whatever, is really a powerful thing to do, so that you can actually be the political leader that you are needed to be in the moment. And we will sometimes say to our candidates, if they just want to stay and wallow in being angry, upset, screaming at the sky, which all these things happen when you're running, it's perfectly fine. We don't have any judgment about it, actually, because it is understandable. And we have not worked with a single candidate who does not have this. Like, it is part of just the candidate experience. So we will give them, okay, well, if you want to be upset and whatever, when should we call you back, and when are you going to be done being upset? And they usually laugh, and they say, well, give me until noon. And we're like, okay, we'll call you at noon. And that's what we do. It almost always works. They're usually fine in about 30 minutes
yeah.
after that, which is
Yeah.
great. So thank you
Yeah.
for saying that, John.
Yeah, well, and it is the difference though between choosing it or thinking that you have no choice in it. Because when you say that to somebody who thinks they have no choice in being upset, they naturally get more upset. That you think that they could even not be upset.
But
Yeah,
even just being confronted with the choice, you can't help but get that there's an actual choice in the moment. Well,
uh,
we got another question. So we've got several comments. We're going to go to these, but Alexandria asked the question of, how do I sign up with you guys as a candidate? I have run for office before, and I am considering trying again. Thank you. Well, that's wonderful, and we would love to support you with that. The way to do that is to go to olsonstrategies.com, and we have, I believe, a place to sign up there. But you can email us. You can email me at dustin@olsonstrategies.com. OLSON strategies.com, and then Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com. And we can help you. We can help anybody who's looking to run for office, who wants to start an organization that's out to do something politically. You name it. We are pretty much a full service political consultancy, so we can help you with that. So thank you for that question, and thank you for your leadership and being willing to step up. This is a really important time. There's a lot of people who are going to be scared to step up at this point, and we need people like you to actually to step up. So we have another couple comments here. What I find, this is from Women Reigniting American Patriotism. By the way, that could be one way that you be a leader across the country, is you create organizations around the idea of reigniting American patriotism, like Women Reigniting American Patriotism. You can join them. What I find is most upsetting is that Trump's Sixth Amendment right is being denied. He and his First Amendment. He is unable to defend against his accusers in the public square where he has been put on trial. That is what I find most disturbing. Am I wrong, or do you see it too? I think this is definitely goes into the thwarted intention and the unfulfilled expectations and undelivered communications that we were distinguishing earlier. That there's an expectation that you should be able to respond to those accusing you. There's literally an inability to communicate that's there, and the intention of having all this go smoothly and actually having what we consider as our best president. He's moving up the line for me as all this stuff unfolds, because we've not had a president who's had to take on so much and accomplish so much at the same time. It's pretty remarkable. Some people are going to want to run away and be like, oh, I don't want to be associated with it. The truth is, I think this moment and him being able to withstand all of it is showing just how fortunate we are as a country to have had someone who had the ability to withstand the Russia hoax, everything, and still be able to put one foot in front of the other. It is pretty remarkable. It's almost superhuman in his ability to deal with it.
And the only thing I want to say to that is to your comment there. It's not about what others view as right or wrong that is going to have you be upset or not be upset.
Yeah.
Because if that, however it's occurring for you, is what is going to make it, is what is going to have a real impact on you. But one of the things we normally try to do is get others to buy into whatever it is that has us upset. So
Yeah.
choose to giving up being upset, we go find others who could easily be made upset with whatever we think is upsetting. And then we're like, phew, now being upset is okay. Where what you haven't done is actually gotten dissipated or gotten rid of that upset overall. So,
by the way, I want to make it clear: being upset's perfectly fine. You can be upset all you want. It's just a question: is that going to help you be the political leader that you are, that the people around you need you to be? Is that going to help you achieve the things that you're out to achieve? And I would suggest that it's not. And people are going to, whatever energy you're bringing to a situation, other people are going to feed off of it. And this is the difference between objective reality and subjective reality. And we all try to get people to come along. It's actually a persuasion trigger that, everybody believes this. So many people say that this is how it is. Objective reality only is that multiple people agree on the same view of reality at that moment. That's all it is. It doesn't mean that it's more factual or it's more real or anything else. It just means that you got more agreement. That's all it means. That a few people have their view of a specific part of what they view as real. They view it the same. That's all that is going on there. And that's why we want to do it, is we want to check, is my opinion of all this, is it valid based on other people agreeing with me? So that's what happens, is you just have a bunch of people commiserating and they decide that they all are upset the same way. But it's okay to be upset.
And it's a great lead into the next comment, which is, can you explain the psychological impact replaying the same news story over and over again has on the psyche? One news network plays the story over and over again. The agenda is not to report, but selling it. And that could certainly be their intention. But one thing that happens is what Dustin was just describing, which is everybody believes this, or 4 out of 5 dentists agree, or whatever it is, right? It's like go
back to our episodes where we talked about the 6 persuasion triggers and Cialdini's book Influence. That is one of them, social proof, and the idea that if you have agreement, everybody's saying the same thing. If everybody's jumping off the bridge, are you going to do it too? Well, studies show that probably that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then also we did our episode on Cicero, and Cicero was very clear. He was considered the greatest Roman orator, and he used a lot of Plato and he used a lot of the Greek ideas as to oration and to persuasion and whatnot. And one of his main tenets to how to be a great speaker was to have repetition. And that by repetition, you're going to start, you're going to persuade people. He also said emotion was more important than logic. He said it was important to use logic to get to the right decision, But then if you're trying to persuade other people, you have to use emotion. So there's a whole episode, Making Rome Great Again, Cicero, the original showman. So, and you find out when you study Cicero that he was basically the original Trump, and when he led Rome. So, go back and watch those. But that's totally what's happening with these things. It's not healthy to watch the same cable news network constantly. I recommend you get in, you get out. You watch a little bit, get a sense for where their take on things are, and then maybe go watch another channel for a little bit, get their take on things. But if you have it on for hours on end, it is just brainwashing you, and that's all that's happening. And it's not that even there's any kind of intention. It's brainwashing you because of the repetition. It is very effective. Next question or next thought is, everyone in Trump's administration was out of work when Biden comes in. That's obvious. Yep. Thank you for that. Oh, and this is really thank you for this comment, Zachary. Zachary says they are awesome and rock stars. Well worth it to have them run your campaign. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. And it really is the honor of our lives to be able to help people who want to make a difference in their communities and to have that impact across the country. And then Women Reigniting American Patriotism says Olson Strategies has a high success rate of winning elections. Well, thank you very much. We were fortunate, we aren't where we hoped we would be at this moment, yet for our company, we had 26 wins for the election cycle, which was quite the blessing. And, the opportunity to make a difference for that many organizations and candidates is a pretty cool thing to be able to be a part of. So thank you for that acknowledgement. So this is the last thing, is that you get to choose to stay upset or to invent a new way to look at this or a new way of being in the moment. So being undeterred, being empowered, being whatever it is, you can create that. You can have your own filter on how you want to do that. We talked about how Alexandria could hold her situation. So once you do that, then you can start sharing that with people as opposed to your misery. You can start sharing with other people, your new view, or like how you're being in the moment in this time. You can start actually sharing that with people. You can start sharing with them what you see might be possible for the country in this moment, and you can spread that as opposed to the upset and misery. By the way, but if you're upset, you feel free to let us know about it. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing right or wrong about any of this. It's just our intention is that you be empowered in this moment to be the leader that your community needs and the country needs at this time. So, Sean, any last thoughts as we wrap up this conversation?
Well, I was just thinking about, the saying is misery loves company, right? And it could very well have been said that joy loves company as well. But a lot less people try it. So,
Right.
So,
well, very good. Well, we shared with you before. If you want to run for office, you can join us at olsonstrategies.com. You can email me, Dustin at olsonstrategies.com, Sean at olsonstrategies.com. We're happy to help you out as you run for office, to help you go through the conversation that you need to have to figure out whether it makes sense for you to run. So do contact us, and we'd love to help you. Sean, if you'd like to tell us about our other sponsors.
Yeah, so we're also proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What do? It's the canvassing, the petitioning, the live calling. This is all your one-on-one, person-to-person interaction that can be held where an actual conversation takes place. And how do you get to them? It's www.grassfire.us. And look, you have one shot to make a first impression. And if you are petitioning to get onto the ballot yourself, or you have your issue be on the ballot, well over 90% of the time, you only get one shot at having that happen. So make it count. And the professionals at Grassfire are the best in the business at it. And the accolades from past clients are out there. So check them out. It's www.grassfire.us. Grassfire also fuels 10centtexting.com. Look, this is the way, without that voice-to-voice conversation, to still have a connection, still have a conversation. And you can do that through the tools at 10centtexting.com. So reach out, set up the consultation call, and they'll go through it with you on what all is possible. If you're a government official, how can you actually have interaction with these folks, or or your staff, or depending on the level of office? How can you communicate with voters to let them know what's going on under the Golden Dome that you don't like, and that you would stop if you were in office? And the list goes on and on. So check out all the possibilities at 10centtexting.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And this is what really was clear to me as you're going through all that. This is all about conversations. And what we just had was a structured conversation that hopefully has you in a different place at the end of it. I know for myself, from having the technical difficulties at the beginning of the call or beginning of the show, and everything else that that's going on in the country, like this is such an important conversation to have, to be able to actually go in and short circuit the upset, anger, frustrated, all the stuff, and to be left with a little bit more power and being present to, the opportunities that we have. And so just at the end of the show, I feel really, frankly, optimistic about what we can do as Americans, and this too shall pass, and that we get to be the ones who are the ones who stand up and really deliver for our country in this moment. And that's what we get to do as Americans. That's pretty cool. So if you want to be sure to be able to stay in the conversation, do go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets insider. You'll get exclusive stuff for us. We'll send you a book from our library free. And then also just we know that there's a lot of stuff happening right now. And as we're in the process of standing up for our country, standing up for the First Amendment, standing up for what it is to be American, there will be challenges that present themselves. And if for some reason we get turned off, we have a way to communicate with you, and we can continue to, empower people to be the political leaders that their communities need, and to help reignite American patriotism. So we are committed to making that happen. So go to politicaltradesecrets.com, please, and do sign up to make sure that we have you on our list, and we can communicate with you and continue this conversation. You also watch the show there live as well. It gets broadcast at politicaltradesecrets.com. We're here every weekday around 11 a.m. Even if we have a challenge with the technology, we will communicate with everybody one way or the other at that time. So thank you very much for being a part of the show today. It really warms our hearts that we all were able to come here today together and have this conversation. We hope that it's left you being a little bit more empowered than you were at the beginning, and maybe a little bit more clear as to how you can make a difference, or that maybe things aren't as bad as they feel like. And ultimately, you have the ability to now think clearly on what you can do to make a difference. So with that, thank you very much for being here today. And this has been another episode of Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes, and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.